Good morning, and we're going to talk about the rapture again this morning, and we're going to read from the Gospel of John, chapter 14, and I want to talk about the fact is that the rapture itself, of course, is a separate event from the second coming of the Mashiach, and that's where a lot of people get confused and mixed up. Is that they assume that it's all one event, but it's really impossible for it to be the second coming to be the actual and the rapture to be one in the same event. In other words, people who believe that the rapture will take place at the uh, end of the tribulation, which is the time frame that the Mashiach, or the Messiah, comes back to the earth, and actually his purpose is for a different reason at that time than it is for the purpose of the rapture of the church. And it's for that reason that we're going to talk about this morning. In John chapter 14, starting at verse 1, this is the Messiah, Yahusha, speaking here. And he says, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in," of course, my English translation says God, but the Hebrew would have been Elohim, which actually means mighty one or almighty one. Then he says, "Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. And if it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I go, you know, and the way you know." Now, notice that he said in verse 1, he said, "Let not your heart be troubled." These verses here are a message of comfort. These are very similar to the words of the Apostle Paul, or Shaul, that he wrote in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, talking about starting at verse 13 down through verse 18, where the rapture actually is mentioned. Now, the word rapture isn't in the text itself, but the event is very well described in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13 through 18. It's also very well described in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 51 and 52 by the Apostle Paul. And you'll also find this in other references, many other references of the scriptures where it's alluded to, even in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament, there's references of the actual event itself. Now, it doesn't use the word rapture, but the event itself is very well described. I did a YouTube video a few weeks ago about the fact that the rapture is revealed in the Old Testament or the Tanakh, and you can research my videos on that. But with that said, this message is the same message basically that the Apostle Paul was making reference to when he said in 1 Thessalonians, talking about that we as believers, those that have died before us in Messiah. Now notice this is specifically for those in Messiah. These are not, the rapture was never promised to the nation of Yasharel or Israel. Now, we know that individual Yahudim or Jews who have put faith in the Messiah, they're no longer considered by Yahuwah as a part of Yasharel. He considers them part of what we call the church. Now, again, that word church is an English word, and the Greek word would have been ecclesia, but the Hebrew word would have been kahel. But the main emphasis, not so much as the word, what English or Greek or Hebrew word that we use, the important part of what that word means, and it means called out ones, or the assembly. And there's Yahusha himself declared in Matthew chapter 16, and I've mentioned this a number of times, but I have to keep mentioning it for those that are not familiar with why this is important. But in Matthew chapter 16, the Messiah, Mashiach, said, talking to his disciples, that upon the revelation of who he was going to build his church or his assembly upon that revelation. So only those that have put their faith and trust in the Messiah and have recognized who he is and put their faith and trust in him are part of what we call the church. Now, this message that in John chapter 14 is addressed to not only to the disciples of that day, but it's addressed to us, being that it's a future event where he said he would come and take us to be where he was. Now, of course, we know that he went to be with the Father because he said, that's what he said here in this particular passage, that he was going to be with the Father. And because of that, he said that he was going to prepare a place for us. I believe this is in reference to the New Jerusalem, which will be our dwelling place revealed after um, the tribulation is over. It will come down out of heaven, prepared as a bride for the church, and it will be our dwelling place, because the Scripture says that only those names who are written in the Lamb's book of life will be allowed to enter therein. So this is a message of comfort. This is not a message of, um, about his second coming. This is a message that he would come and take us to be where he was. Again, the purpose of the second coming of the Mashiach is to defeat the enemies of Yasharel that are coming against them, to put an end to and to remove the sinners off the earth at that time, because it's preparing the earth for the millennial reign of the Messiah. And only those that have been saved during the tribulation, which will be not only Jews but also or Yahudim and Gentiles, those that have been saved during the tribulation period. There'll be natural people that'll be allowed to enter into this 1,000-year reign of the Mashiach. We'll pick this up on our next session, and please share this with others. Thanks again for all your comments and support. Please share this with others, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. Thank you. Shalom.